Hey guys, welcome into the 15. My name's Nick Cole, and we're with you breaking down the Week 3 SEC football matchups from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the Tulane Green Wave visiting the Ole Miss Rebels, the number 17 ranked Rebels, at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium on Saturday night. It's an 8 p.m. Eastern kickoff. The game's going to be on ESPN2. The line on this game leans Ole Miss. It opened at 15. Down to 14.5, but still the Rebels over a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. And they're projecting points, and more points in this one. Over under 77.5 is where it opened. It's dropped slightly to 76.5, but bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, that's still a lot of points, huh?
Yeah, it's great to be with you today, Nick. And we'll see if the Fighting Lane Kiffins can play defense before they get into the SEC. Has an offense that can at least tell us a little bit more about Ole Miss's defense. So why don't you get us into Nick's news and notes and let us know what's going on around these two programs as we head into Saturday's game?
Sure. So let's start with the weather. And we've got temperatures that are going to be pretty good. They're going to be in the 70s. But the thing to look for in this game is a 50% chance of thunderstorms. So, maybe we have a clean track. Maybe we have a little bit of rain to deal with that can hinder scoring some of those points, potentially. What we do know, though, on the wind side of things, 5 to 7 miles an hour, what they're projecting. So it shouldn't be anything that is a major factor for betting this one. And then from an injury standpoint, Tulane starting wide receiver Michael Jones is out for the season with a torn ACLs. That hurts them a little bit. And they're also Deuce Watts missed the first 2 games, another starting receiver, and it's kind of unclear whether he's going to play for them this week or not. Some storylines that I'm looking at going into this game. Lane Kiffin returned to the field for week 2. Obviously, he missed the first game of the season with the COVID quarantine for himself. His team, however, showed up and beat Louisville on Monday night, that Labor Day game that was nationally televised. Everybody came away pretty impressed with the Rebels. They ended up being a top 25 team coming out of it. Well, week 2, they got him back. The opponent was Austin Peay. They beat him 54-17. They were up 37-0 early. Really could have named their score, probably called off the Dogs a little bit. I just don't know how much we learned about them in that game. I know you have some thoughts on where their defense is at right now, but that's kind of where they're at coming in this game. A little bit of a step up in competition from week 2, a little bit closer maybe what they saw from Louisville in week 1. And speaking of Tulane, this is actually their first road game of the season, but they're already road warriors. Unfortunately, Mother Nature has wreaked havoc on their early season schedule. They're based in New Orleans, victims of Hurricane Ida, displaced the Green Wave. Their first week 1 game was supposed to be played in the Superdome versus Oklahoma. That game was obviously played in Norman. Instead, Oklahoma graciously opened their stadium and I believe passed on the proceeds from the limited attendance in that game back to the Green Wave. And the Green Wave almost thanked them by showing up and beating them. I mean, that game was very close at the end, 40-35. Something to keep in mind as we get to betting this game is A, lot of points in that game against Oklahoma, and B, Tulane was able to kind of score with them and stay within that spread. Week 2, they scored even more points, 69-20 win over Morgan State. This was supposed to be a home game again, but this game was played at Legion Field in Birmingham, just sort of an open place that Tulane could go and host their game, which good for them. And they do get to return home next week for week 4 against UAB, September 25th. They get back into their own dig. So good for them. But this is actually, again, the very first road game of the season for the Green Wave. And then finally, let's just talk a little bit more about that Oklahoma performance. Sure, they lost the game, but QB Michael Pratt accounted for 4 touchdowns in that game, 3 passing, 1 rushing, and threw for almost 300 yards. And it just makes me wonder, Christopher, as we steer this conversation into the betting side of things, should we be looking at the Green Wave as a team that can hang with Ole Miss offensively?
Well, 2 of those touchdowns against Oklahoma did come late in the fourth quarter. I think the Sooners kind of took their pedal off the gas a little bit. But you're looking at a spread of 14.5 at the last check. I mean, there is clearly a backdoor possibility as well. Oklahoma, let them score too late. What's to say if Ole Miss gets a big lead, they wouldn't do the same thing there as well. But let's take a look at Ole Miss's defense a little bit. we know that it's better than last year. Or I feel like it's better than last year. But the question is, how much better? Is it marginally better? Is it much, much better? And they did bring in a lot of transfers, a lot of new bodies, especially along the defensive line and middle linebacker. And so I think where they've made the biggest improvement is probably against the run on defense. Now, Austin Peay was 152nd when I checked in the Sagarin ratings, which combines FBS and FCS. So maybe in the upper half of FCS teams, and probably maybe even the upper third. But Ole Miss let them put together 40 plus yards on 7 different drives on Saturday. And Ole Miss, the defense actually looked a lot better against Louisville in the first half than it did in the second half. So in the last 6 quarters, we've very quietly seen, if you haven't watched their program closely, we've seen them kind of regress a little bit on defense. And S&P Plus has them ranked 43rd on defense right now. So Tulane, we mentioned they have a pretty balanced offense. I would like to see their receivers healthier, because I think where Ole Miss is susceptible is on the back end of their defense right now, and trying to create pass rush and trying to cover people deep. So we'll see if Tulane has the horses outside to do that in this game. One thing we do know for sure is that Ole Miss's offense is excellent. And, you know, Oklahoma put up 40 on this team, even though they took their foot off the gas late, even though Spencer Rattler did not play very well. And this Ole Miss team likes to run tempo, and Matt Corral is as good a bet as anybody in the nation to lead the country in passing yards. So we could see some real video game numbers from the Ole Miss offense in this game. And I think forget the 662 yards and the 6 touchdowns that Corral has this season. The thing that really stands out in my mind is 0 interceptions. And even more than that, 0 turnover-worthy throws as graded by Pro Football Focus. Last year, there were only 13 quarterbacks in the country that had more turnover-worthy throws than Corral. So if Kivens got him dialed in, and if he's got him to stop trying to force things at times and force the home run and force it into coverage deep downfield and take what the defense gives him, Ole Miss's offense is going to be even scarier now the rest of the season. So definitely a step up in class for Ole Miss, and we're going to learn a lot about the Rebels in this game that could help us from a betting standpoint the rest of this year. But let's not wait to the rest of this year to cash. Let's get some winners right now. Nick, what are you betting on this game, and why are you betting it?
Well, Christopher, people who have watched our videos have heard me confess this already. I am a sucker for Lane Kiffin overs. And no matter how many points you throw at me, it never seems like it's too much, because Lane loves points and I love Lane for loving points. And at 76.5, we got to get to 11 touchdowns probably to cover it, but I'm fine, man. Let's do it. I'm going to take the over 76.5. And in order to get there, I need the former SEC members who, by the way, tweeted out that they have a helmet sticker that shows their 3-time SEC championship on the back. I don't know if that was a joke or not. We'll see on Saturday if they're actually going to have those on their helmets. But back in the 30s and 40s, Tulane actually won some SEC championships in football. But I need them to come along with us to get to that total. And so I'm going to back the 3-time SEC champion and say they can get to the cover the 14.5. So give me Tulane plus 14.5. And it may have to be backdoor fashion, maybe similar to the Oklahoma game where Ole Miss has this game in hand. And I think Tulane can score enough, and the Ole Miss defense is susceptible enough where we can slide it within 2 touchdowns and get the over and Tulane to cover. What are you thinking?
Yeah, you know who else was in the SEC at that time? Sewanee, the school of the South. Different times then. And I'm taking the over 76.5 as well. I mentioned how good Ole Miss's offense looks this season. That's no surprise. Given what Oklahoma did to this Tulane defense, I expect Ole Miss to have no problems there. And I do think Ole Miss's defense is maybe not as improved as some people are maybe crediting them after the first 2 games. So I'm going with the over there. And I will take Ole Miss minus 14.5 and go against you on that one. You know, it's funny, if you watch Lane Kiffin for any amount of time as a head coach, he's alluded to the point spread a few different times during his career as a head coach. He knows what the spread is. He'll know what it is going into this game. And I think coaches won't admit to this, but I think he's one of the coaches that he'll try to cover for his boosters. He'll try to cover for the fan base that's betting on him if he gets a chance. He'll have that in his mind. So I don't know that Tulane will have quite as easy of a time as they did against Oklahoma, scooping up some touchdowns late, but maybe they will. We'll see. But I'm with you on the Lane Kiffin overs in this game. Give me Ole Miss minus 14.5. Give me over 76.5. For Nicole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.